Welcome to Canucks After Dark. Here are your hosts, Parker Hallowell and Clay Emo.
Good evening, Vancouver, and welcome to the #1 Montreal Canadiens podcast on the West Coast. Wow, what a night. My name is Parker. You know me as ParkersPucks, and you are listening to Canucks After Dark, which hit #1 in Taiwan, #1 in Hong Kong on the hockey podcast charts this week, which is pretty cool. This is a weekly show we do every Monday night at about 10 o'clock, talking about the Vancouver Canucks and other stuff going on around the NHL. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, the one and only Canuck Clay Emo. How are you doing after that hockey game tonight?
Parker, thank you for the intro. I'm fine. I actually didn't really have a dog in the fight. I'm not one who wishes ill will on Toronto Maple Leafs players, organization, coaches, or fans. But I must admit, as Montreal kept winning games, getting their way back in this series, I had a feeling it was white knuckle time for Toronto for sure. And that game, basically, as soon as Montreal got out of the first period, tied 0-0, I knew that. No, I didn't know, but that kind of went the way I kind of expected. And whoever won, I just want Winnipeg to roll through them. But I know we'll talk about that a bit later.
Yeah, I was at that point. I was expecting, like, it was 3-1. I'm like, yeah, okay. Everyone's going to be like, oh, it's 3-1. And then the Habs won and forced, game 6. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. But, like, there's no way, right? And then then I'm on the golf course the other day, and I get a notification, Habs win. Like, oh, okay, game 7. But there's no way they win game 7 too, right?
No way.
But here we are. It was just, for the playoffs this year, I'm sort of just on team chaos. So every bit of chaos, and this was the most chaotic thing possible. And that was great for me. But also, everyone in YouTube, of course, we see you guys all live. We see you all blowing up the chat, which is great to see. You can leave your comments all throughout the show. We'll have them open. We can see them. We'll shout some of you guys out as we go. You can find all of our stuff in the links in the descriptions. If you're listening to the podcast afterwards, it's all linked there as well. But yeah, basically, other than that, I guess let's just get into the show. Where do you want to go first today?
Well, I just want to clarify. Did you say we were #1 in Taiwan and #1 in Hong Kong?
We hit both. Yeah. We hit one on, I think, Tuesday and one on Wednesday.
Well, and I know, and all joking aside, I know that we both check these charts daily because it's interesting.
It is interesting.
We actually did our best. We had our best week in Canada. We stayed in the 50s, 60s as opposed to dropping off to 288. We stayed in the 50s and 60s range, which is pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on it, our podcast version of the show got about 30% more listens than any of our previous episodes. So it was very cool to see the growth, a bit of increasing. We had the one guy from Australia said he'd see if he could get us on the Australian charts. He did. So all in all, a good week for Canucks After Dark, I'd say.
Yeah, so we're very grateful to everyone who watches live, watches later, listens later. No, it's a lot of fun. And being in episode 8, that means we're 2 months in and no signs of slowing down, even though we got no team to talk about, but that's okay. We make it work.
There's things happening. This is a busy week, right? We've got Podkolzin who signed. We have the draft lottery this Wednesday. That's 2 days from now, right? That's a big night. Hopefully,
I better start learning about some prospects.
Exactly the same here. I mean, if everything goes right, maybe we have an emergency episode on Wednesday night to talk about the #1 overall pick, but probably not.
Yeah, let's do that. If we win first, or if we win any of the 2 lottery draws, first or second, then maybe we should pop on at 10 for maybe half an hour and just to cheer and pat each other on the back.
Have a good time. Absolutely.
Yes.
I guess then the best place to start is probably with the Canucks because this is Canucks After Dark, I guess. And I guess the biggest news coming out of Vancouver, a couple things came out, but probably the biggest one is Podkolzin will be here next year, and hopefully he'll be a staple in the lineup and hopefully never leave.
Yes. So let's break this down a little bit. Jim Benning hinted at this on the Donnie and Dolly show on Friday, and he basically said we're going to sign him by June 1st because there's certain deadlines that every different leagues, different transfer windows, blah, blah, blah. But it got out there that by June 1st, they had to file the contract with the league, with Central Registry, CR, as people call it, people that are much cooler than us. But yeah, they filed the contract. And if June 1st was the deadline, we knew it was going to either be announced Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. Rick Dhaliwal tweeted out Saturday night. Canucks introduced it, officially announced it Sunday morning. And why don't you go through the details? 3 years, right? A typical ELC?
Yeah, I think it's the standard sort of thing. So obviously, first round draft pick in 2019. So a couple years ago, 10th overall. And like you mentioned in one of your tweets, he was going into the 2018-19 season. He sort of was the consensus like number 3 guy. And then
behind
he sort of
Hughes and Cackle, exactly.
Yeah, and then he sort of dropped off. But he has, he's been playing in the KHL. If we look at his contract details, so it's the standard, whatever, 900 and something K, partially base, mostly, or a little bit of signing bonus. He gets the full performance bonuses. So if he's able to max those out, that's another 850K potentially on the cap. Which, I mean, best case scenario that happens, right? Like that's money. That's money they'd be pretty excited to pay if he's going and hitting all of those bonuses. But pretty standard deal for a guy coming out of the KHL. He's had some ups and downs. I'd say the regular season was mostly downs for him. But he came through in the playoffs, and that's something you can't say about some players across the country there.
For sure. And before we even talk about where we project him to play and how he's going to play and who he's going to play with, Parker, if I may, I just want to spend a couple minutes talking about it. I was blessed to be at that 2019 draft. It was 2 days, obviously Friday night, Saturday. I remember it vividly because the Friday was June 21st. The Saturday was June 22nd, my birthday. But then in between the two drafts, I volunteered at my son Sean's after grad. So I didn't sleep. I actually went to the draft. Then I went to Sean's after grad. I dealt blackjack and roulette. And then we went home, showered, and we got in the car and went to day 2. But day 1, what was crazy is you're right. He was pegged as high as number 3 going into that year, and even in that spring. And then he started to drop. All these U.S. national development team players, U.S. development team players started to rise. And then when it came to number 10, Zegras was picked number 9. So then there was Podkolzin still on the board, Caulfield, Spencer Knight, Cam York, Matthew Boldy. So then Stan Smeel goes up, and I know you know this. He completely butchers Podkolzin's name. Maybe he was excited to welcome all the fans in Vancouver, but it came out as Vasilia Podkolzin. Like,
it was a bit of a miss there.
And then the biggest thing I want to talk, yes, there you go. And what I really want to talk about is the crowd reaction, because I cheered because I don't know a lot about process, but I knew he was highly regarded. There was a lot of booing. I even posted some footage from it, and a lot of just like almost exasperation or a buzz because people did not know what to think of it. I think some people, Parker, knew that he'd still have 2 years to do in Russia, but there's only a few guys from that draft class who've already made an impact 2 years in. So I think that was worth waiting for, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I pulled up. I was curious just to sort of validate this. I have a Sportsnet article by Sam Cosentino, who's a prospects guy over there. In his rankings, this is from October 2018, so the start of that 18-19 season, and he had him number 2. He had Kaka number 5. But yeah, like he was. Who do you have 3-4? Who do you have 3-4? Cousins and then Doc.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But yeah, like he was supposed to be, the guy, and then he goes into that, 18-19 season and didn't really impress going into sort of the MHL or whatever that sort of second tier in Russia is. But I mean, I'm excited. We keep getting so lucky with prospects, so I'm a little hesitant to be like, oh, he's gonna be just like Höglander and Hughes and Pettersson and Besser and everyone who we bring in just happens to be top 6 or top 4 right away. I'm a little hesitant to do that, but I think the Canucks really need a guy on his entry-level contract to be able to at least have top 9 minutes, right? That's a huge hole that the Canucks have, and if they want to compete for the playoffs next year, that's a piece that they need.
Yes, and we've heard a lot of good things. We've heard about his compete level. We've heard about how responsible he is defensively, how he wins puck battles. Not the best skater ever, not the best finisher ever, but it's interesting. I remember Chris Faber a year ago saying Höglander and Podkolzin, they kind of profile the same way. Höglander is more effective in the offensive zone. Podkolzin is more effective in the defensive zone. So if he has anywhere close to the same impact that Höglander had, I think we're going to be very happy.
Yeah, and it's a big, it's sort of a Flash versus just like a bulldog mentality, right? Höglander has like the sort of higher end skill, like the hands, and he makes the fun, nifty plays. Podkolzin just says, "That's my puck. I'm gonna come take it from you at any cost." And that's such a fun, like that's the sort of player that everyone in the city can get behind, right? Like that's your standard hustle guy who's just gonna go, he's gonna work, and he's gonna skate constantly. You watch the kid skate. And he's just like, it's not a very efficient stride. Like his feet kind of come up with every stride, but they're always going as fast as they can.
Right.
So at that point, it's just like, look, if his skating gets a little bit more efficient, it's not like he's a bad skater. He's just not super fast, but he's just always go, which is entertaining.
I just had a thought. I've never seen any footage of you doing anything athletic, but I know you're an athletic guy. I know you're a good golfer. I know you've played sports. You know that I like to play sports, even though I used to be twice your age before last weekend. I have a feeling if we played hockey, you'd be like a Höglander and I'd be like a Podkolzin. I just have a feeling like I could see you being pretty skilled and pretty flashy. Yeah, no?
I'm very much more Podkolzin-y, I think. My hands aren't great, but I'm always first in the corner. I'm the Tyler Mott.
Okay. Okay. And I guess that makes me Jay Beagle, unfortunately. Okay, that's fine.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, we better not talk about that anymore. I'm getting sad.
And I did want to mention just sort of his stats from this year, right? So he goes in and he's playing for, like sort of the premier organization, basically one of the two premier organizations in the KHL, Scott St. Petersburg. And he basically just got buried in the lineup, right? He was playing, he was either scratched or he was playing 8 minutes a night or 11 minutes a night, never on the power play, just basically buried on the fourth line. And that's sort of how Russia treats their young players, especially when they're young players who are leaving Russia. They don't care about his development all that much, right? They want to win. They want to win hockey games. So he played 35 games. Keep in mind, almost no minutes across those, 5 goals, 6 assists for 11 points. But then they get to the playoffs and again, he played 16 games instead of the 35 he played in the regular season, also had 11 points. So he was 6 goals, 5 assists in 16 games in the playoffs, which is really good in the KHL. That's the, it's the second best league in the world. And he's out there putting up really solid playoff numbers for one of the best teams in the league.
So what you're saying is when he starts with us in October, we should tell him it's the playoffs already.
Yes. Well, the Canucks are going to need to treat the whole season like the playoffs if they're going to make it. I don't think that's much of a stretch to say.
Yeah. So where do you think, in your opinion, where do you think Podkolzin slots in or has an opportunity to slot in?
I think he's probably going to start on that third line. Actually, I could see, I'm sure in like preseason, he'll get like a shot with the big guys, right? Like maybe they'll go like Pettersson, Besser, Podkolzin, or something like that, just to try it in the preseason. But if you can put him on the third line with whoever, really, and just see if he's able to elevate that line, right? Because the Canucks sort of third line has been like, oh, we want to have some sort of offense, and it's like, yeah, but there's actually no one offensive down there. So if he has at least, the foot speed and the work ethic to maybe bring that line up to be an actual scoring third line potentially, that would be a nice addition. But I worry about sticking him with, a Brandon Sutter and just having sort of everything go to die there.
My gut feeling is, as much as this might be a line 2 or 3 years down the road, we're not going to see Horvat between Höglander and Podkolzin and then Pearson on the third line. I actually think Podkolzin and Höglander are going to fight for the same spot, which is fine. You want competition, because I simply don't see Travis Green dressing a sophomore and a rookie with our captain on that second line. So maybe it's Horvat, Pearson, and then one of Höglander or Podkolzin. You're exactly right. So then if he drops to the third line, I would love to see him on one side, Tyler Mott on the other side, and then but who goes in the middle? You mentioned Sutter. Does he resign? Does Travis Boyd come back? Does Gravac, Beagle? Yeah, it doesn't look that.
I want none of those players on my third line.
That didn't sound good, did it?
I love Tyler Mott. I also don't want Tyler Mott on my third line. That's a problem. Tyler Mott is one of the best fourth liners in the NHL, I think. But he shouldn't be on the third line. It's like Brandon Sutter. If you want to bring Brandon Sutter back at a cheap contract, fine. But I never want to see him off of the fourth line. Like if the Canucks have holes, they are that sort of 3C and then a winger, right? Just give us someone else to have some sort of scoring prowess on that third line. Whether that's, I don't know, like an Eric Holla or something similar, it'll be interesting to see, especially with the limited cap space the Canucks have going into next year. Obviously Virtanen's out the door, pretty 95% on that. So they're going to have to, I mean, that'll free up some money that they can use to maybe find someone to fill that gap. But it's going to be a tightrope for Jim to walk to fill this lineup out.
And you make a great point, though, about Podkolzin. He doesn't have to win the Calder Trophy, but if he performs well, then you're looking at 5 straight years of good rookies, right? Starting with Besser, Pettersson, Hughes, Höglander, and then Podkolzin. That's pretty good. Now, of course, that means our actual prospect pool isn't that good because as soon as we have someone good, we don't rush them, but they're good enough because we've been picking so high. They're good enough to get in the lineup. So it's kind of like a catch-22. You read an article in The Athletic that says, our prospect pool isn't that good, but then you at the same time you read one that says the drafting has been really good in the past 3 or 4 years. So it's one or the other, and hopefully Podkolzin sticks. You're right. Third line, I can't wait to see what he can do.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the biggest thing is the Canucks they're able to get sort of the occasional hits in the draft where you get like high end talent that are able to graduate to the NHL. But the problem is what you see is what you get, right? After Podkolzin, who do the Canucks have that's like waiting in the wings to come up? I guess whoever's picked this year. But, if we're looking at 9th overall, potentially 9th or 10th overall, they're not always the next year. They might be the year after next sort of thing, right? Yes. And you want to really maximize. I mean, if the Canucks want to compete in 2 years, a guy like Podkolzin and whoever is drafted this year are going to be your 2 guys on entry-level contracts that are going to be the big things, right? Like I think Höglander would still be as well, right? So if 2 years from now, I guess the season after this next one, in theory, you would have Podkolzin, Höglander, and this year's first pick all on entry-level deals. That's your window. Right? Because let's say you have 3 players that are all hitting their peak, right? Let's say Höglander turns into a really good player and he wants $5 million. Let's say Podkolzin wants 5. Let's say all of them want 5, just to make the math easy. Well, if they're on entry-level contracts, you're saving $12 million, right? Yeah. Instead of the 15 that they'd want. That's a whole player if you're competing for a cup.
Great point. Yes. And it speaks to, that's why you want a guy, we've talked about high expectations for him. We don't want to make it unrealistic, but Jack Rathbone, same thing. He is on an ELC next year. Imagine if he develops into a bona fide second pairing guy by the middle of the year on $925,000. That's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's free. Like it's such good value, and that's what a lot of the NHL is. It's maximizing your entry level deals on your good players. It just frees up so much cap room for guys who might be worth $7 million but are only making $1 million.
I'm giggling. Someone just one of my buddies texted me, Dangle is having a breakdown online. You should do the same when Benning isn't fired this year and is given 22-23. Get those clicks going, brother. That's my friend's advice.
Yeah, that's the thing. Just be extra dramatic. It gets people to click.
I know we're getting to this, but it's funny. A lot of the chat, Parker, has been talking about guys like Steve Dangle and Hot Take Hockey, and it's interesting. I've been eyeballing the chat. They're kind of asking, do you feel bad for them? But maybe we can save that too if we're going to talk about Toronto, Montreal a bit more. But that's kind of what people are chatting about in our chat box right now.
I mean, we've been sad for years. So not that bad. I mean, the way that they've been doing it, right? Like it's the build up the hope and then just rip your heart out. That sucks for the good ones, I'll say. Like the Steve Dangles, right? Yeah. Like clearly a really good guy. And it's like that really sucks. But also that's sports. Sports sucks sometimes. We've been through our fair share of pain. And we've been trolled on the internet because of it. So, at some point, I don't feel too much guilt dishing a little bit back, I would say.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, they can take their apparently Dangle's live stream on because he works for Sportsnet, he gets to have the audio on, right?
And he doesn't on the Sportsnet YouTube channel.
Yeah. So 400,000 views tonight.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think I had like 900, 800.
That's good too.
That's great. It's just a 500th of what he did. But that's okay. He's also been doing this, a lot longer than we have. And also I'm a Canucks channel mostly, so not too upset. Okay, while we're here, I want to give a shout out to another Apple review that came in. If you guys haven't already, you can go leave a review on Apple Podcasts. All of the reviews have been great. If you leave a 5-star review, we'll read it out on the show. Like this one from HSM Fangirl, who has supported both of our channels pretty well. Leaving a 5-star review that says, best podcast ever. I'd highly recommend this podcast to anyone interested in Canucks hockey. So thank you very much, Fangirl. And if you're interested in leaving a review like that, just go over to Apple Podcasts. You might be listening on there right now. About 50% of our podcast listeners are. You can just go click that 5 stars, clickety clack, type in a nice review, and we'll read it here on the show.
Love it. Thank you, Fangirl, for that awesome review. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. What do you want to talk about next? Do you want to stick with the Canucks? Do you want to go around the NHL? Where do you want to go?
Why don't we stick with the Canucks until our midway break, and then we'll do non-Canuck stuff after the break, if that makes sense.
Sure. Let's take 30 seconds to talk about Carl Plasek.
Yes. I know nothing. Go ahead.
Oh, me too. I saw a tweet that said that the Canucks are likely to sign Carl Plasek. He was a 6th round pick in 2019 Podkolzin draft, just churning out elite players. He played in the Czech League, I think. He had 10 points in 44 games this year, which really doesn't sound like a lot, but apparently they see something in him that they really like. He's a left winger. Basically, probably an AHL body, right? Probably just signing him, bring him over to Abbotsford next year, get him some games, see if they can develop him. But I'm not like so fired up or anything. It's another body.
Right. And then I guess the news, Parker, comes up because of that, I guess that June 1 deadline we were talking about earlier, right? Like it's got to be. So it's interesting. I don't mind giving the Vancast some love because we know that, and you had a nice chirp on them earlier in the week saying that we are ahead of them in Taiwan, or at least we were for that one day. They make it a really good point. They actually said that if, so there's news that they're not going to resign Ethan Keppen, who was the 4th round pick, but with Podkolzin, Hoglander, Carson Falk, Seelovs, Plasek, and McDonough, and Arvid Kosmar, they're talking about potentially some of these guys, depth guys, but potentially 5 to 7 guys hitting from the 2019 draft, which is awesome. We've always talked about if you get one, you should. If 2's great and 3's like a bonus, right? So 5 or 6, that's pretty good. Yeah.
It's at least a good sign they're not giving up on these guys right away, right? Keppen is the outlier, but he I mean, they picked Keppen because he basically had carried his terrible team in 1 year. I think he played for Flint, and apparently their program just isn't very good. But he carried them to be decent, and then just the following year he didn't do the same, and it looked like he sort of fizzled out a little bit. So they took a shot, and if you're picking in the late rounds, I like it. Take a shot, right? Have a sort of high upside guy. Don't pick a guy who's like, oh yeah, this guy will definitely be on our AHL team, right? Like that's boring. It doesn't really help your organization. You can find a million of those guys. So if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. It is nice to see they're not giving up on all of these people as well, though.
Absolutely. And then I know we've talked a lot about the 2017 draft with Pettersson, Lynn, Gadjevich, DiPietro, and Rathbone, and there could be at least 3, if not 4 guys out of there. It depends if Lind or Gadjevich work out, which we're not sure yet.
Yeah, I guess that's all we need to talk about Plasek, if that's how you pronounce his name. Let's go into the Sedins. That was some interesting news that came out this. I don't know if it came out this week, but it got a little bit more play this week, at least that's for sure.
Absolutely, and Elliot Friedman was on with Donnie and Dolly, and he's the one who said that. Actually, it was this morning. He said that potentially their role might be very heavy with the Abbotsford franchise, yet to be named, and that's one way for them to really learn the business very quickly, but be in charge of everything, not just on ice, player personnel, coaches, but a business model, right? And sponsorship and filling the building. So Baptism by fire for sure. But I do think the one thing I did want to bring up, and I vlogged about it earlier, is Trevor Linden was on a global interview today, and they asked him, hey, any advice for the Sedins? And he was very coy and he's very sharp in what he didn't say. He said they're smart guys. They don't need my advice. They know what they're getting into. They know how the organization. Oh no, they know the lay of the land, and they know how that organization works. So. Pretty telling stuff there by not saying anything.
Yeah, he really tiptoed around that one. And I think what's interesting about, this whole Sedin's thing, and you mentioned Abbotsford, is it really gives them an opportunity to hit on a bunch of different things, right? You got to keep in mind there are two of them, which that's two bodies, and if you do want to have them involved with the Abbotsford team, that doesn't mean you have to not have them involved with Vancouver. It's an hour away, right? So you can send them, like you can say like, hey, today we don't, if you guys want to go work with the guys, work with some of our prospects in the AHL and do some like skills development or whatever, right? Because that's the thing with the Sedins is they can probably do literally anything, right? Like there's nothing that they haven't succeeded at that they've tried to do. They're very smart people. They're very good hockey players. They could probably still play on this team today. So if they wanted to go to, go over to Abbotsford and it's like, hey, we want you to just go work on, our Abbey AHL team power play or whatever it is. Right. They can just be sort of your glue guys, your do it all guys, send them here, send them there. And they can just, do whatever they got to do.
Yes. And we've heard from Elliot Friedman and the likes of Rick Dollywell that the reason why it's taking so long, Parker, is they want to be sure. They want to know what they're getting into. They want to have very clear expectations. They've seen what happened to Linden, a very just his beloved character, how he got basically ran out of the organization, and hopefully they can learn from that. And whether it's getting on the same page, vision wise, communication wise, I think they want to learn from Linden's mistakes, and the team won't announce anything until they're ready to, and that would imply that Sedins are ready to actually agree to something, title, responsibilities, all those things. I think it's a good move. Like I don't think the Canucks are doing it like it doesn't hurt, but they're not doing it just to bring in two names. It sounds like, not that they did this with Linden, but it sounds like the Sedins are being very intentional and deliberate, just like how they kind of played the game. I think they're doing that in the way that they're kind of negotiating and agreeing on terms right now.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, I think that it's hard to go wrong with these guys. There are a lot of people worried about like, it might, tarnish their reputation if things go sideways. But I don't think their role is high up enough to go sideways, really, right? Like, they're not like on an equal plane or like have, are overseeing Jim Benning like Trevor Linden technically was. Right. These are, they're just sort of guys that work for the team, right? Which makes them, I mean, I don't want to say like not as important, but it makes them not as, not as exposed, not as, in danger of tarnishing a legacy or anything. Like, that's not going to happen. They're going to be guys like Manny Malhotra worked for the team on the bench, right? Did he tarnish his legacy? No, we loved him more, right? Like it was, so I don't think it's one of those scenarios at all.
Mm-hmm. Let's say they only had spot for one of them, just for the heck of it. Do we know enough about the differences in personalities between Henrik and Daniel to be able to pick one? Do you say it's Henrik because he was the captain, because he was kind of more the setup man, so he kind of better vision? Do you say it's Daniel because he was the sniper, or at least the better finisher, meaning maybe he can close deals? I know I'm stretching here, but do you have a preference?
I think you take Henrik because I think I don't know. I feel like. I this is so tough. I get the captain thing, right? Like the C was on his jersey. I guess that means something, even though they're basically the exact same person. And Daniel had better finishing, but that doesn't really matter. He's not going to be like the shooting coach or anything. So I don't think it would matter. I think it would be bizarre. I just want to see them both be the GM of the same team. That would be cool. Like have just co-GMs, because who knows? Do they just agree on literally everything in life? Like, do they just always think the exact same thing? And Daniel's like, oh, hey, we should, let's go trade for this guy. And Henrik's like, oh, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah. Let's, this is our offer. And it's just like exactly.
Imagine
on the same page.
Henrik calling up a powerful agent saying, we want this guy. And then Daniel calls on the line and says the exact same thing. It could be like double teaming at its finest. I think this could go somewhere.
Absolutely. It's a flawless plan. Nothing could go wrong. And I think, I mean, it would be interesting to have co-GMs.
Yeah. So where some would say maybe co-GMs don't do that, we are at the halfway point of our podcast. And Parker, tell the people what that means.
Sure. Yeah, of course. We do our segment every week. Don't do that. So if you have any don't do that's, put them in the chat. I guess I'll start off.
Okay.
Giving a guy $11 million on a long-term contract who clearly can't perform in the playoffs and has shown time and time again that it's just not going to happen. Don't do that.
Don't do that. Yeah.
I got another one. Yeah, I mean,
keep going.
Trading a King's ransom for Nick Foligno instead of Taylor Hall, who was available, and I think would have added more to that team, and especially a team that couldn't score on Carey Price. Maybe don't do that either.
Excellent one. I got one. Taking penalties when you're playing against the Colorado Avalanche. Don't do that.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I was gonna say, assaulting a guy on the ground, kneeing him in the head, a couple games after hitting a guy in the back into the post. I would say don't do that, but apparently it's only worth 2 games, so maybe it's fine. Maybe you can do that.
That's crazy. What do you think of the Graves hit? By the way, that premeditated that the Graves hit on Janmark. Did you see that one?
It was a big hit, but I don't think it was. I don't think it was terrible. I don't think it deserved the what came back. I'm shocked.
Yeah.
I'm shocked they didn't give him 3 games and just be like, all right, you're done for the series because Colorado's probably going to sweep you guys with what we saw yesterday. Because wow, Colorado looks good.
Yeah. You know, I almost liked Reeves last summer when, even though we were going to play them, I don't know. No, it was before the playoffs started or right in the middle, whatever. But I didn't mind him when he was standing up and being the face of the Black Lives Matter movement in the NHL. Like, I actually was almost liking him, and then he goes back and he's a goof this year again.
It's crazy. It's the same thing for me. Like, off the ice, he seems like a good guy. Like, he seems fine.
Yeah.
But then on the ice, he's like harming people, like truly doing terrible things. And I was just like, okay,
right.
Well, and that's kind of how I feel about Brad Marchand too. Like,
yes.
I don't like Brad Marchand. He's a rat on the ice, and that's his personality, and that's what he does. But off the ice, he's a pretty good guy, apparently. He's like a really genuine person, but I hate hearing that. I want to hate these people, but sometimes they do things that you can't, and then sometimes they do things that make it, sort of overshadow the rest of their stuff.
Yeah, I almost cheer for Marchand when he plays, like, for the Olympic team or the World Hockey Championship team or whatever.
He's a good player.
Yeah. All right, let's get Fangirl says not giving a 5-star review for this podcast. Don't do that.
That's a great one.
A C edits being socially distanced from the second round of the playoffs since 2013. I don't do that.
Well, being socially distanced from the second round in the playoffs since 2004. Don't do that either. Toronto.
That's good. That's Toronto. That's right. That's right. Inferno, running out of ideas for the don't do that segment on Canucks After Dark. Don't do that. No, I think with all you guys, we're going to be okay.
You guys can carry us on these.
Yeah, Lucas saying the Leafs are going all the way. Definitely don't do that.
No. And I think, who was that had that tweet? There was I forget who it was. It was Corwin at Bar Down for TSN. He was like, yeah, we're all going to look back. Like, this was yesterday. It's like, we're all going to look back at this and laugh when John Tavares hands the cup to Joe Thornton, is what he said.
I did see that.
That aged.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Couple more. Casey, Peter DeBoer excusing Reeves in the post game. Don't do that.
I agree with that one. That was a rough look for DeBoer there.
GL Rebirth picking the Leafs to beat the Habs. Don't do that. Yeah, a lot of people did that.
I don't think that was a bad call at the time. I don't think that was a bad call before tonight, to be honest. But yeah, no,
for sure.
Things go sometimes.
And I like this one from Justin too. Trying to figure out how the Department of Player Safety determines penalties for suspensions and fines for your own sanity. You're
gonna end up in a psychotic loop. There's no reasoning. It's just confusion all the way down. Well, when the guy who runs the Department of Player Safety owns a clothing brand for which Ryan Reeves was an ambassador at one point, weird. There couldn't be a conflict of interest here or anything.
I did not know that. Wow.
I don't know if it was an ambassador, but there's a picture of Reeves wearing a Violent Gentleman shirt, and like Peros had like a tweet or something, or like a blog post on their website talking about how good of a person he was, or something like that. So
that's and Dexter made it's not a don't do that, but Dexter made a funny comment. I'm not sure you saw Evander Kane's tweet at Ryan Reeves. He did say they should play. Yeah, they should play Ryan Reeves 20 minutes a night as punishment instead of suspending him. So that would be funny.
That would be a little bit dangerous for Colorado, though. I think. I can't believe he's coming back in this series, though. Like, that blows me away that he'll be back in Game 4. And think about it, if Colorado's up 3-0 in this series, and maybe they're up 4-0, or even if it's like 3-1 in Game 4, like Reeves is just going to be a literal danger to everyone on the ice at that point.
Absolutely. So before we talk about the second round, which is now started, you want to talk about the first round real quick? How'd you do?
Oh boy, it was a rough one, and I don't think I really had that many hot takes of picks. I think I picked almost the favorite in most of my picks. But we look at it, and I have mine pulled up here. So I picked Toronto in 5, which I mean that almost happened, right? Like, it wasn't that crazy. What did you have in that one? Do you remember?
I had Toronto in 6 or 7. I had Toronto for sure.
Yeah. The other one in the North, I said Edmonton in 6. I thought I said Edmonton in 4, but on the bracket I put 6. But Winnipeg swept them, so 0 for 2 on the North. Okay. You had Winnipeg. That was your.
I did get Winnipeg.
That was your win there.
So I'm up 1-0. Okay.
So you got 1 in the East Division. I picked Pittsburgh in 4.
I went over.
I did take Boston, though. I took Boston in 7. Okay. The in 7 was hoping it would go 7. I was pretty sure Boston would win, but Boston took that one in 5 and pretty handily.
Okay, so you got 1 out of 2 from the East, and I went over because I took Pittsburgh, Washington. So now we're both at 1 out of 4 so far. Okay,
right.
So
but we're tied. Then I go on a tear here. Central Division. I had Carolina in 5. It was Carolina in 6.
Yep. I can't remember my games. Yeah, but I had Carolina as well.
I had Tampa Bay in 6 over Florida, which I nailed to perfection.
That is good. Yeah, I can't remember my games, but I did have Tampa as well.
Yeah. And then on the West, I had Colorado in 4, which lots of people thought I was crazy for.
Nice.
Yeah, no, that was that wasn't close. Yeah. And then I had Vegas in 6, but it was Vegas in 7.
Yeah. So we both went. I had Colorado and Vegas as well. So we both went 5 for 8. It's not brutal.
That's over 50%. I think we did fine. And I mean, the Toronto Montreal series was an upset. You can't argue otherwise. Like, it just was. I think the Islanders over Pittsburgh was an upset because Pittsburgh was on an absolute tear to end the season. And I think Winnipeg over Edmonton was kind of an upset too. Especially with the season that Connor McDavid had. You know, he had 100 points in 50-something games. That's crazy. It just didn't translate.
Bigger disappointment to you, McDavid and Draisaitl, or Marner and Matthews?
It's Toronto for sure. Toronto. You just look at expectations, right? This was like Toronto's in their window right now. Like, they need to win now. Not saying Edmonton isn't. I mean, they're old, right? Like, lots of Edmonton, like you look at like Smith and Koskinen and net, like they don't have a huge window ahead of them either. But Toronto was built better. Kyle Dubas has done a much better job. Toronto is legitimately one of the best teams in the NHL. But in the playoffs, I don't know how they have these demons that they can't get past. But they've showed it again. I think it's by far the biggest disappointment because if they let's say they take down Montreal in a reasonable amount of games, they go into Winnipeg. They probably make fairly quick work of Winnipeg, I would say. If Connor Hellebuck doesn't, go crazy, and then they're in the top 4, right? And then you need to get lucky for a couple of series at worst, right? Maybe you end up against like a Carolina. Well, then it's not crazy to think that Toronto could beat Carolina. Or even Pittsburgh. I think Colorado again would wipe the floor with them, but maybe Colorado runs into a team, right? Maybe Vegas gives them a hard time or something, right? Toronto, this was Toronto's best shot. They're in a terrible division. They had a free path to the Final Four, and they blew it.
Right. And I think you have, for your second round, you have Colorado Winnipeg, Boston. Am I right so far?
Yeah. So I have Colorado. So I took Edmonton over Winnipeg, but in my video where I predicted the second round, I said if Montreal wins, then I think I'm taking Winnipeg.
Yeah.
So Colorado, Winnipeg, Boston, and Carolina.
Okay, that's the only one we differ. I still think Tampa will win that one.
I'm not very confident in mine anymore in that one.
Yeah,
I still think Tampa Bay is probably going to win it, but my brackets is Carolina, so I'm taking Carolina.
No, very good. And our regular PSA to everyone out there: remember, there's no such thing as East and West conferences this year. Once we have our 4 division winners, they are reseeded by point totals for the regular season. So depending on who else makes it, we might see a West versus West battle of Colorado versus Winnipeg, or an East battle of Boston versus Tampa.
Right.
We got to figure it out. We got to see which 4 teams get through and seed them 1 through 4, and then 1 plays 4, 2 plays 3, and you go away from this talk of East and West Conference for this 1 year only.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, while we're still talking about the playoffs, I mean, we can sort of run through these series a little bit more in depth. We got the Islanders in Boston that they had game 2 tonight. Casey Cizikas with the OT winner. Pretty sweet goal from maybe not the guy you'd expect to do it, but after that first game, which didn't look great for the Islanders, they come through and they tie the series up.
Yeah. When we talked about last week, it was us, right? Talking about how Islanders are kind of like a little, I don't know if we use the term boring, but they just kind of a lot of the same type of guys, like the Brock Nelsons and Josh Baileys of the world, right?
They have so many decent players, I think is sort of the safe thing to say, right? Like none of they don't have bad players, but they don't have like electric, fun, good players, right? They have Barzal. But I mean, the rest of their team is just like, it's just a bunch of dudes, right? Like, look at the guys who scored today: Josh Bailey, Kyle Palmieri, JG Pajot, and Casey Cizikas, right? Yeah. Like, you look at that and you say, okay, where's the star power here, right? You compare that to the guys Bergeron and Marchand both scored for Boston today. That star power is such a difference. And even in net, right? You have Tuukka Rask, who's been one of the best goalies in the league for the last 5-10 years. And you compare that to the Islanders, like, oh yeah, they got Varlamov and Sorokin. And it's like, they just have so many good players, and credit where it's due. They're able to at least keep things close.
Yeah, I think they're going to be plucky for sure and give the Bruins a good fight. But, my original one, I had Pittsburgh over Washington, so I obviously have to redo that. Neither team made it. So I'll say Boston in 7. I can't remember what you said in your video.
Yeah, I think I said in 6 probably. That would be my guess. Okay. That's usually the safe. That's sort of the cop-out.
Yeah.
Where else are we here? So Carolina, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay took game 1 2-1. Was that yesterday? I guess that was yesterday. And Vasilevsky's so good.
He is.
Carolina's got good goaltending too, though. I mean, the problem is it's unproven, right? You got Alex Nedeljkovic, who was an absolute stud all season, right? He had like a 9.32 this season or something crazy like that. But he's only 25, and you compare that to Vasilevsky, who I think is only like 26 anyways, but he's been playing for a little bit longer, and Vasilevsky's in his 7th year in the NHL and he's 26. That's crazy. But I mean, he had a 9.25 this year, and he's just absurd. It's going to be, there's so much firepower on these two teams. I think, like, there's a lot of guys who can score, but there's 2 really good guys who don't allow you to score at the same time. So, both teams are at risk of getting goalied in this series, I would say.
I just, argue if you want about the way they did it, or if it was cap circumvention or whatever, but I just don't know if Carolina has an answer for Nikita Kucherov and Steven Stamkos to a lesser extent. So I didn't even think about games. I know I've always picked Tampa, so I'll say Tampa in 6.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine about Kucherov, and he watches Tampa Bay a lot more than I do, and he was saying that Kucherov clearly isn't the same player he was last year. Like, clearly he's not 100%. He's just not really skating. He's not really battling as much. He's sort of just a lot more stationary. And there's the whole cap circumvention argument, and I think it's like pretty clear that there's some shenanigans there. But if it's legal in the rule book, they have every right to do it, and we can be angry about it, and I am kind of angry about it. But I'm more angry at the system than the man, you know, is sort of the way I'd go with it.
So you got Carolina in how many?
I guess 7. It's the only,
okay.
But in reality, I think it's going to be Tampa Bay in like 5 or 6, but
by the way, in the chat, make sure you guys are typing out your predictions as we go. Catch up with us. We did the East first, and we both had Boston winning in 6 and 7. And then for the Central, Parker's got Carolina, and I have Tampa. Let's save the North for last. So let's go to the West. Does Vegas win any games?
No, they don't.
Really? You're calling a sweep?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's going to take Fleury having a miracle night. Look, I mean, it's so easy. Like, it's like the odds are that Vegas wins one game, right? Like, let's be real. Yeah. Like, it's like sweeps are hard, but I don't see the path to victory here, right? Like, like the Colorado has one of the best assembled defenses in the NHL somehow, and it's a bunch of guys that you really hadn't heard of before, like 2 years ago. Like Devon Taves, Sam Girard, right? Like, these guys weren't like super high pedigree, and they're out here being elite players. And up front, you've got currently the best player left in the NHL, the best playoff player left in the NHL. Nathan MacKinnon looks like he can just do whatever he wants. Like, there's nothing stopping. You saw his goal to make it. What was it? The goal that made 6-1.
6-1.
Yeah, like he just decided to score. I saw a good post, and it was like, it's like the guy in beer league who's 2 divisions too low in a close game, and he's like, all right, I'll just go score one real quick for you guys. And he just chose to. He's like, yep, I'm going to go get one here. I'm going to go finish my hat trick off or whatever it was. I guess it was only a second goal, but you know, it's ridiculous.
So you're saying Avs in 4?
I'm saying Avs in 4.
Okay, I'll say Avs in 5.
How generous of you.
Oh, hey, I'm a good guy.
And again,
all right, I'll go first for Winnipeg. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say Vegas is a team I'm so happy to see lose, by the way.
But you're not the only one. I think, Just Incredible would agree with you. Okay, for Winnipeg and Montreal, I do not see this going 7. And given that, why not? They're rested. They swept. I'm going Winnipeg in 6.
Interesting. I think I saw a stat, or my buddy told me about a stat, and I don't know how true it is. I didn't look it up, but almost always the team who comes off the sweep playing a team who just played a game 7 loses.
Wow.
Don't know if that's true or not.
Okay.
So don't crucify me on that. But I think this is an interesting one because yes, Winnipeg's rested. Both of these teams are so similar to me, and I think it's just because I look at who their best player is, and both of their best players are in their nets, right? Connor Hellebuck, one of the best goalies in the NHL. Carey Price, one of the best clutch goalies in the NHL, right? You want playoffs, you want Olympics, you want any elimination game. They showed his stats for elimination games, including Olympics. Yeah, it was crazy. So I just see this being a goaltending duel. I think I'm going to go... I mean, I said I'm going Winnipeg, so I think I'm going to stick with that. I can see this. I hope this one goes 7. I could see it going 7. The thing about going 7, I think 6 is always more likely than 7, but 7's more fun. So I'm going to take, I'll take Winnipeg in 7.
So we agree on Winnipeg, Colorado, and Boston. The only division we differ is Central. You have Carolina and I have Tampa. So yeah, someone's going to do one game, 1 point better than the other one. So that's good. This will be fun.
Perfect. All right. We are at the point where we've pretty much talked about all of our topics, and there's about 12 minutes left. So if you guys have any ideas on what you guys want us to talk about, of course, we want to make this as interactive as possible. We see all of you guys leaving great predictions in the chat, which is awesome to see. We'll, of course, read through those later, as we always do. McKinnon was going 48 kilometers an hour on his 6th goal.
Yeah, I heard about that.
That's absurd. But yeah, if there's any topics that we've sort of glossed over or we've missed from this last week, again, we sort of just convene and try to remember everything that happened over the last week sometimes. So sometimes we miss stuff. But if there's anything you want us to hit on, that would be great. And while you're here, hit the like button. That's always fun. And subscribe if you haven't already.
Yes. Lucas asked, could the Islanders upset the Bruins? I think we talked about they can, but we both don't predict it to be so.
Yeah, I'm sure they could. It wouldn't be super crazy. I don't think it will happen, but most people don't think upsets will happen bore they do. So
no, true.
So I mean, it's totally possible, but I don't think it's I don't think the odds are crazy high.
I agree with you. Fangirl says thoughts on the possibility of Virtanen playing the AHL next season. I think if anything, if he doesn't play in the AHL, I think he goes overseas and makes way more money.
That's basically
because
his only
AHL.
option.
Yeah, AHL, you're still connected to an
club.
NHL pro team. Yeah, you got it.
And he doesn't have the skill to make it worth it, right? He doesn't like to make it worth a team's trouble to keep in the AHL. So he'll probably go to Russia, if anything. A couple of good questions here. I don't know which one we want to go to first.
Go for it.
Tyler Graovac. I like this question. Do you think Tyler Graovac could be a fourth line center? Is he worth bringing back next year?
From money says yes, right? I'm sure we'll sign him for $1 million or whatever. I have to see a bit more. I think he started off really well, got a couple goals, greasy goals, but I'm not convinced yet. But I like his attitude.
I really liked his last couple of weeks of the season. He actually showed some flash. He had the one goal where he scored from below the goal line, where I did a breakdown on that play on my channel, and I was like, he literally wins the faceoff forward, goes inside out on a defenseman, takes it around him, sees that, and I don't know if he actually saw this, but basically his two best options were pass it in front or play it to the far defenseman who is wide open. But if you shoot from the far corner on a sharp angle, if you see a gap, well, if you miss the gap, it's going to go around the boards to your far defenseman anyways. So it just made a ton of sense to shoot there, and he did, and he found the goalie's mask, and it went in. I think he's got some of the IQ there. I think I'm not saying he's like 26 years old, 28 years old, something like that. He's not gonna be like a star or anything, but I think he's shown that he's gonna put the work in, and I wouldn't hate to see him back.
So if he's your fourth line center, who's your third line center?
Anyone else that isn't on the team right now. It's got to be external. I just don't see that hole being filled from the inside.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
Lucas is wondering about the AHL. We haven't done a ton of research on the opponents. I know they're going to be in that same division as the rest of the California teams, which is going to make travel interesting. It's going to mean some flying. It's going to cost some money. But at the end of the day, I haven't done a ton of research on that. It's probably something I'll make a video on as we get closer to the new year, new season.
Right. And I probably won't even make a video on it. I'll just share yours. Okay, good.
I'll take it.
So I know Lucas is a big AHL guy, and we could probably hit him up for some Abbotsford facts for sure. Cyrus, I like this. So I asked you, what position should we draft in the first round? So let's say it's all equal. Best player available, it's equal. You have a choice between a defenseman and a forward. What are you choosing?
If everything is equal, I have two sides on this. One, you take the defenseman every time if they're equal. Defensemen are more valuable than like a winger. And the Canucks have enough centers that are high end. You can always use more defensemen, and look at Colorado and their sort of defensive core. However, the impatient person in me is thinking, well, a winger can play this year and a defenseman might need another year, and I want to see this player now. But in reality, if everything else is equal, you take the defenseman 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially when you look at our D. After Hughes and Rathbone, you drop down to Jet Wu, who may or may not stick as a third pairing guy. Maybe 2 or 3 years away. So we're not that deep on D for sure.
Yeah, it needs some work on the back end. Justin, a good question here. Hearing the rest of the Canucks coaching staff expect to return, what are our thoughts on that? Because I guess there was the news that came out today saying most of the Canucks or all of the Canucks coaching staff is expected to return, but they might add an assistant coach to the bench as well.
Yeah, so let's talk about the guys that they do have. We have Noel Brown, who coaches basically the forwards and then the power play. Then you have Nolan Baumgartner, who coaches the D and thus the penalty kill. Our power play struggle looked predictable, looked static at times, of course, missing PD. But this was the same power play that was 4th overall in the league just 1 year ago. I don't know. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I don't like the power play structure. My problem is not with the drop pass like everyone else's seems to be, because everyone in the NHL uses it because it's very useful if done right. Are they doing it right? That's another discussion. But it is the staticness. And again, you look at the high firepower power plays around the league, right? The Edmonton, Colorado, teams like that, Tampa, they move, right? They're skating. They keep things moving. The Canucks are a very typical, it's like we got an umbrella, we keep passing it around the top until something opens up, or maybe Horvat's open in the middle. And that's it. It's so predictable. It takes 40 seconds to open up a scoring opportunity because finally someone loses their man on their passing. But if you're moving, the Sedins, mastered the cycle, and that's just constant moving around, right? You're forcing people to keep track of their guy and switching guys. And the more chaos you can cause on the power play, controlled chaos, the better. So power play wise, don't love the current power play. Now, could the Sedins help on the power play? That would be an interesting discussion as well, considering how much they dominated. But that's my thoughts on at least Newell Brown.
No, that's fair. I don't have strong thoughts on him either way. I actually don't mind Baumgartner on the blue because the Canucks penalty kill was, when they are healthy, it's pretty good. I like their structure. The D, I thought when Hamonic and Schmidt basically came into their own about a couple months into the season, I thought the D, especially when we were winning games in March before the COVID outbreak, it looked outstanding, and Thatcher Demko had a huge part in that. So I don't mind Baumgartner, actually. I would bring him back. If I had to pick one, I'd probably pick Baumgartner over Brown.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't know a ton about like how much impact assistant coaches have, right? We look at, he coaches the defense, and the Canucks defense has troubles. But is that a personnel thing? Is that a coaching thing? That's so hard to tell, right? To really get a good sample, you'd have to find someone who played elsewhere and then came here, like a Nate Schmidt, who I thought was better defensively than he used to be, but was probably worse offensively than normal, and had 7 pucks go in off of him, unfortunately.
So, and then I, as a follow-up to this, Sedin was asking about the possibility of replacing Manny Malhotra's job, which was never replaced. Kind of what you mentioned, just another coach and assistant coach, as opposed to one of the 2 associates that are on the bench itself, but rather whether upstairs in the booth or who knows.
Yep. More voices is better.
Yeah.
Usually.
Especially when you see Manny and Alex Burrows kind of coaching against each other. That was kind of cool today.
Yeah, it was neat. Another one, there's so many that I want to talk about, but another one from Sedin, it's talking about Seth Jones. This is an interesting discussion that's sort of come around lately. Is Seth Jones worth going after? I want your thoughts on Seth Jones before I go off here.
Sure. Good mobile, great, tough defenseman, right shot, all those things that you want. But I wouldn't trade for him if he's going to be a UFA in a year. Now, granted, we have some money coming off the books at the end of next season with Holtby, Beagle, Eriksson, Roussel, to name 4 right off the bat. There's 18 to 20 million right there. So I wouldn't want to give up prospects, picks, and players, which I think it would take to get Seth Jones now. But I get the fact that if in a trade you're the only team that you have to worry about versus free agency, then you're going against dozen other teams. So I would like him on the team, but I don't know if we have the assets to move to get him prior to him becoming a UFA. And then if he hits UFA, then all bets are off.
Yeah. He's not, in my opinion, it's, even if you could trade the assets and then just secure him to an extension and be like, okay, we have him locked in, there's no way he's going to live up to any contract that he signs, in my opinion. I think he's just I think it's a disaster of a contract waiting to happen. Yes, he's been excellent the last couple of years. This year, not so much. Everything analytically, every single analytics based metric you look at Seth Jones at, he's terrible. Don't know why. Could be, I'm sure part of it is the team he plays for, although usually they try to account for that. But almost everything, when it looks at play driving and actual on-ice impact, usually not very good. Now, would I love to see him playing with Quinn Hughes? Sure. Would I love to see him playing with Quinn Hughes and both of them combined making $17 million a year? Maybe not. No, that's a little scary. And it's
that's 20% of our cap. Don't do that.
Don't do that. No. So
don't do that.
I'm on the stay away from Seth Jones train. No Seth Jones.
No, you articulated that well, and I think he's kind of at that age where he's next UFA contract. You're right. It could be disaster waiting to happen. That's fair.
Mm-hmm. Wow, so many of you guys asking questions, and we're almost out of time here. Clay, bring us another one.
Okay, let's do this one. I think we talked about it very quickly last week, but I would just love your thoughts. Do you try Miller as a third center?
Yeah, Jason Bruff talked about this on a broadcast 2 or 3 weeks ago. I don't think so. I like the idea of having 3 really good lines. The problem is you wouldn't have 3 really good lines because you have no supporting cast left for the second or third lines, right? If you have more firepower, right? If you brought in 2 or 3 more really good wingers, and you could start to sort of like spread the wealth along among your top 3 lines, then I could see it. And then you're still playing Miller, then you have 3 lines that you play, each of them like 17 minutes a night, and then your 4th line plays 9 because they're just out there to kill time. The Canucks don't have the skill, they don't have the firepower to do that right now, though. I think it would just hinder the top sets too much.
I'd agree with you, and especially as much as JT Miller says, I feel more involved in the middle, I feel more engaged in the middle, I feel like I make more of a difference in the middle. Yeah, but that's going to be at the risk of poor wingers, because then who's that leave you with on the wing? Basically, Besser and Hoglander, and maybe Pearson and a bit of Podkolzin. That's not enough. So, yeah, I'd rather see him load up the top line. That Lotto line, when they are good, they are good. Yeah. So why not put him where he's strong? He can still kill penalties as he's done. He'd still be on the power play, still be a leader, all those things. But yeah, I agree with you. And I agree with a lot of people in the chat that I would keep him on the top line and keep that Lotto line together.
I think you need to, for sure. You need to. The Canucks they need goals as it is, and I think taking firepower away cannot help at that point.
So are we going to commit then? If the Canucks win one of the 2 lotteries, we'll jump on at 10:00 on Wednesday night. Is that a deal?
Yes, and I will be live during the draft lottery for one.
Awesome.
Because why not? I got nothing better to do. So Wednesday, whenever the draft lottery is, I'll look it up. It's probably like
4
3 or 4.
4 p.m.
Yeah, 4 o'clock. Yeah. Okay. I'll be live for that. So if you want to hang out, you can do that. And yeah, if the Canucks get one of the top 2 spots, which the odds aren't super high, but we can dream, we will have a Canucks After Dark at 10 p.m. on Wednesday. If that happens, we can hope, because that would be sweet. Then we could talk about the Owen Powers of the world and guys like that.
Yeah, I got 48 hours to look some guys up, so I'll do that.
Yeah, you'll have a few hours after the draft lottery if
that's true too. Okay. Otherwise, I don't have to. That's true. Okay.
Anyways, sorry to everyone whose questions we missed. There were actually so many more questions than we expected, which was great. Keep them for next week. We'll need more of your input as we go on, I'm sure, as we get deeper and deeper into the off season. But this was a lot of fun, as always. All of you watching, if you missed any part of the show, you can rewind to the beginning. We're on YouTube. It's that easy. And if you're listening, or if you want to listen on your way to work tomorrow, or you're at the gym, do whatever, you can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, literally whichever podcast platform you choose that you use, it's there. So just search Canucks After Dark and come hang out and listen to the show there. And yeah, go leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Leave a like on the podcast here, or on the YouTube video here. Clay, any parting words here?
Yeah, well, I think it's time that we get some good hockey draft lottery juju. I'm not sure what juju is, but I think we should get some of it. And it would be amazing if we did indeed, win one of the 2 lotteries and move up to first or second. Can't complain about that. Canucks luck would dictate that 2 teams from below us pass us and we pick 11th. But maybe we just maybe things work out for us. I'm not sure who's going to represent us. Maybe it should be one of us, but maybe that's a little too late for now.
I have the perfect scenario.
Okay, let's hear it.
Arizona wins the draft lottery. Some other team wins second. They then have to redraw the first pick, and then the Canucks get it.
Okay,
that would be hilarious. Again, maximum chaos, right? Let's see Arizona have to forfeit the first pick. Be excellent.
So they're still, like, I understand that they had their pick taken, but they're still technically in the lottery because of the odds. Is that correct?
Yeah, because there's still the 1,001 combinations to make the odds easy to distribute. Yeah. And basically, if one of their combos gets pulled, run it back,
Yeah.
and then they'll try again.
Okay.
Anyways,
I'm with that.
Thank you everyone for watching. It's been a lot of fun. As always, we'll be back with more next Monday, of course. And if you want to stay up to date with us, all of our stuff is linked in the description. I've got my Twitters right here. His Twitters are all over there. YouTube, all that stuff. You guys know how the internet works at this point. It's pretty straightforward. And yeah, we'll see you next week.